Welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining me, Meredith.
Yeah, welcome, welcome. Happy New Year. It's the first Friday of the year, 2024.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited. It was a good um energizing break for me, holiday break for me. How was it for you, or was it kind of too packed tight with stuff?
Yeah, there
Can
was a
go both
lot
ways,
going
right?
on, but good things. Lots of driving, driving back and forth from
Sure.
visiting family and all that sort of stuff. But New Year's was very quiet, which was really, really fun. So I was glad to have that as we restarted. So it's all
Yeah.
good.
That's the best. I we when you can kind of have that. I like a quiet New Year personally. I've kind of always been like that. Sometimes my wife and I joke. My wife and I first met in high school. We've known each other a long time, and so
Uh-huh.
sometimes we'll joke. We're like, yeah, we're not the going out type anymore, whatever. And then I'll think about it more, and I'm like, I've never really been that type. So, um, but yeah, we actually spent New Year's Eve with our daughter Nat in a cabin, and it was really nice. So,
Oh, awesome.
um,
Yeah, that's super fun. Yeah, we Brandon and I love to cook, so we decided to go grab a really nice steak and grill it, and then we had like potatoes on the side. So it was
awesome.
delicious, and we watched movies, and then I don't even think we honestly made it to midnight. We were both so tired, so I think we were asleep by like 11:30. Honestly, we're
I
so
did
close,
by a
but
technicality, honestly. It was
mhm.
like, all right, midnight, bedtime.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
so, yeah, so this is not going to be a packed with technical things stream necessarily. It's not one of those, but we really thought it would be nice to kind of start the new year with a new stream, kind of chatting about, um, our like hobby stuff, honestly, you and I, but also looking at kind of the year ahead for Reclaim at least a little bit. We're gonna look through sort of what's been going on, and yeah, we got a handful of little things to talk about that I'm kind of excited to go through. So before we get into maybe like the hobby-ish stuff, I want to quickly, um, and I'm trying to share my screen while talking at the same time, which is always a good and easy thing to do. Um, but I want to quickly take a look at the year ahead at Reclaim a little bit. So, if in case you didn't know, if someone's watching this and you didn't know, um, community.reclaimhosting.com, that's your landing page for all of the stuff we're doing like this, that's community focused. So from here, you can go to the EdTech channel and look at the calendar coming up. We have a lot of actually things on the calendar for January already. So we've got this welcome back stream today. Next week, I think Pilot, Amanda, and myself, maybe others, are going to talk about Obsidian. We talked about Obsidian a little bit last year in a stream, and we kind of wanted to follow up on how we're using that note taking tool. Um, we've got a community chat on the 17th talking about your campus in the cloud. Um, and you know big.edu website hosting and sort of the ecosystem and pitfalls and all kinds of things around that.
Yeah,
um
I'm looking forward to that one in particular. It's kind of cool to see like how campuses like host their big websites like that in the
for
cloud.
sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm excited about that one too. And I think there's um it's really interesting because it's actually pretty diverse, like in terms of how people do that, right? Like some schools host it completely on campus, like on hardware they own. Some it's, you know in most cases it's some combination of things, and a lot of more and more schools are going to kind of modern cloud-based setups that are fast everywhere in the world. And yeah, we'll get way into that on the community chat, but I'm excited about that one. um, on the 19th, we've got Reclaim EDU, which is sort of going to be our pitch for our take on your campus in the cloud. And so that's going to be a Friday stream like this one. And we'll kind of talk about what we're cooking up in that space. So that'll very much supposed to that this is very much an intentional alignment of topics here. Um, on the 26th, and this is a tentative date, but at the end of every month, we've got our roundup coming up. So this is just a reminder that you can subscribe for our monthly newsletter and um, all kinds of stuff in the roundup. Um, every month. We'll talk more about the roundup in a second. And then the last stream of the month, we're thinking about talking about Edgeport, which is um we're calling I like to call it like an industrial DNS tool, but it's more than DNS, but it's a tool that we've been using more and more, and we're really excited about, which enables some of this stuff we're going to talk about around Reclaim EDU. It's very similar to Cloudflare if you know about Cloudflare, but it does more for WordPress sites in particular, and it's very exciting, pretty cost-effective tool that we're already using in our infrastructure in various places. So yeah, so that's the upcoming calendar for January. And I'm also going to mention here, we've got this link to the reclaimed.tech blog. And, we just wrapped up in December, starting at the end of November, technically, but wrapped up in December, our Open Publishing Ecosystems Flex course. And so if you are at all interested in, sort of alternative tools for publishing OERs or really any kind of resource, we did a deep dive on various tools that we think are really interesting at Reclaim. So that are all self-hostable and, really put you in control of the content that you're creating, or, the group of people you're working with. And so I really highly recommend checking that series of videos out if you haven't already. You can click on each of these sessions on the website, and it's got links to all the things we talked about. But of course, the watch session videos button will also bring you to the TV Guide watch site that we use for these. And so you can go in there, and we had guests for all of the last 3 tools. So the first one was sort of the first session was Amanda and I focused on HedgeDoc and just sort of kicking off the course. But then the other 3 were really the more publishing focused tools. And we had guests from involved in all these projects at those. So I really highly recommend checking those out. Yeah, it was a good time. We just wrapped it up, and now is not a bad time to catch up on it because we're still kind of talking about it internally and a little bit in Discord too. So
Yeah, absolutely. And while we're actually on this page, Taylor, let's talk about the blog that we just launched to blog reclaimhosting.com. We are taking it back to the blog for announcements.
Yes.
So similar to the roundup where you can subscribe to this blog for any sort of announcements about all things Reclaim, security announcements, events. We just did festive karaoke a couple weeks ago and announced that on the blog too. So you get an email each time we post on this particular page too.
Yeah, I'm full transparency making a note that we need to link to the blog on the Reclaim community site. We have this announcements button that does go, it pulls in blog posts from the team. But we need to kind of rethink this. I think this should probably feature our new blog here, and then have maybe a separate space for the team blog posts. But yeah, that's at blog.reclaimhosting.com. And there's already quite a bit here. So yeah, watch that space. We're going to be using this more and more, and yeah, I'm excited about it. It's really funny because before this, and I always found this kind of curious, but I can see how this happens, is the old Reclaim announcements blog was just part of our normal website. But by the nature of that, it's actually kind of hard to find. So we really thought it needed its own, space. It's that could really make it feel like a first-class citizen here. So yeah, watch that space, and I'll get these this page updated for that soon. So couple other things that I want to highlight here. We already mentioned the roundup a couple times now. It looks like I need to fix this. This is just great. I got a new year, new
projects,
new problems. But I'm sure that that's actually I know it. I know what this one is we've just updated our roundup to a new hosting situation. So yeah, I need to fix that embed. That's how
Oh.
that goes.
Mhm.
But yeah, so the roundup, if you don't know about it, go to roundup.reclaimhosting.com, or if you're on this community site, you can just check out the previous issue button, and you'll get to the roundup, and you can subscribe here, get your email updates. We do one a month. I don't know that we've missed one since it started, so we're pretty consistent with it. And Pilot kind of heads that up, and it's honestly remarkable how like the I think how much is in this every single month, from amazing gifts to highlighting blog posts that have happened in the community, or from the team at Reclaim,
Mhm.
cool tools that have we like to highlight, all kinds of things. So this is always it's always amazing to me what this shapes up to be by the end of every month. So it's cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's again community.reclaimhosting.com. That's the place to go. And we'll kind of link you out to everything. You can also look at the event calendar from here, and look further out, because we do have stuff lined out past January already too. So the last thing I wanted to really mention is in February, near the end of February, on the 21st and 22nd, we've got an upcoming admin workshop that is focused on 1 day on domain of one's own and 1 day on WordPress multi-site. This is the first time we're doing this format where we're covering sort of both back to back. And so you can register for 1 day or the other, or if you want, you can register for both at a discount if you have interest in learning about both, or you already have setups for your school at both. You can go right on the event calendar and get tickets. The pricing is listed there. If you have any questions, just feel free to shoot us an email at support@reclaimhosting.com, and we can help you out. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're really excited about this one too.
yeah, I think this will be really fun. This is more, I want to say we're doing this as a beginner admin sort of deal. So if you're a new domain of one's own, new managed hosting user with WordPress multi-site, definitely recommend signing up for this, because it gets a good base of how to manage and administer your specific setups. And we take questions. We have a panel within that too, so that's always really fun to hear from people in the community about what they're working on and all of that stuff too. And it's really handy to have it all in one sign up from events.reclaimhosting.com for sure. That's really nice.
Yeah, and I really encourage folks who want a refresher too. Like, so this is great if you're new to things, but we're always retooling this every single
Mhm.
time we do it. We don't just like play back the videos. We're always kind of thinking through what's the latest version of this, what's our latest best advice. And I know in particular we're doing a lot right now to think through, last year was really the first school year that we offered much in the way of WordPress multi-site training.
Mhm.
So, but those were offered over a month. And while we did have a lot of folks sign up and participate in that, and that was great, we do think that the format of just like a day intensive workshop works really well for people, because it seems like less of a time commitment, in that they can just kind of say, this is the day I'm doing that, and then fully immersed in it. So we're trying this, which is new for WordPress multi-site. It's kind of how we've done domain of one's own trainings for a while now. And I'm really excited to see what we can learn from doing the two back to back as well. We already do have some people sign up for both days, so I'm curious for feedback from folks on that. But we're always retooling this training, trying to make it relevant. It's a great refresher if you are wanting to get back into the swing of things in terms of admin stuff for the spring, or maybe doing spring cleanup. So yeah, and I also think it's a great way to connect with other admins too, who are doing this stuff at other schools. So
Yeah.
highly encourage you to check that out. So that's the event calendar. kind of what's upcoming. But we thought it would be kind of fun to take an opportunity to talk about like hobby stuff, maybe holiday things, and just kind of ease back into the new year. Like, I mean, left to my own devices, if it's a stream with just me, I will go and try to like do Docker stuff, and I'll just try and fail for 45 minutes. And that's not how we want to start the new year. We thought we'd keep it light and fun, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this idea kind of came up actually from our water cooler channel. We were talking about these little handheld devices. Oh, my screen is going to be blurry. Let me change my video really quick. That the background is going to be blurry, but you get to see my office and all its glory now. But these little handheld game devices called Mius. I never know how to say it. It's a Mio or Miu.
I think Miu is how I've heard in YouTube videos. I have one as well.
Yeah.
We both have the purple transparent.
We have matching.
Yeah.
And this little thing is honestly the best device that I've had that in 2023, and I'm really excited to keep playing games because I love Game Boy Advance games, loved DS games back in the day. When I was a kid, and wanted to figure out a way that I could start emulating some of this on my PC itself. So I think, Taylor, you froze, so I just want to make sure I'm still online.
Oh, you're good from my end.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I've been having network issues, so I just wanted to make sure. And I was really looking forward to trying to figure out how to play all that sort of stuff on my PC. And going through this box of memories that I have, I found my original Pokemon Ruby from my Game Boy Advance on the cartridge still. And I just was like, I have to play this, but I don't have a Game Boy Advance that works. So my husband actually surprised me with this. He found this. He bought this on Alibaba, actually, or AliExpress. So he went and bought a 2-pack. So he has his own. He got this one, and I had no clue what it was, and until I opened the box, but then realized how many games and emulators they have on. It's over 5,000 games of anything from the Atari up to the Game Boy Advance, and even there's so many.
It's a ridiculous fun little device, and I do kind of want to chat, let's chat about the device itself, and then I also kind of want to talk a little bit about just emulation and handhelds and stuff in general too. But this thing is honestly, I got mine. There was a Black Friday sale around that time, on Amazon for it. And I want to say I got it for $60 basically, and then free shipping, from Amazon. Yeah. This is not very expensive in the whole realm of gaming devices.
The price of an actual game these days.
Yeah, for sure. So it's kind of amazing from a technology standpoint that's where we're at with these little chipsets, right? This is a lot of, it's not a Raspberry Pi, but it is in that vein of it's a small, low power processor, and these types of ARM is the architecture, the processor architecture, are all over things. Your Wi-Fi router probably has a chip kind of like this, and all kinds of devices. But we're now at a point where these things are getting so cost efficient that companies can put this kind of commodity hardware in here, but then build a nice device around it with a great little screen and good controls. I'm pretty picky about D-pads and how those feel on classic games in particular. Try playing Mario, Super Mario World, on buttons that barely work. It's not a good time. So this feels great. It's absolutely tiny. To my memory, it's the size of a Game Boy, but it's actually much smaller than most of the Game Boys. Yeah. I still have my old Game Boy Color, and Game Boy, which by the way, it's a pretty close color match for my Game Boy Color. I should have brought it up here, but it's in my basement somewhere. But much larger in the hand than that thing. This thing is small enough to go in my front pocket if you have pockets that are large, large enough. But um, it's such a nice little thing, and there's also like a cool community around it too. Like,
Mhm.
I found out about these just from like a couple YouTube channels I follow, and there's a lot of little handheld emulation devices like this, but people really like the Miu stuff in particular because they typically put really good screens on their devices. They're not too expensive, and they're like decent quality basically for what they are.
Yeah, and the chance to like upgrade things if you need to. Like we bought bigger storage capacity, like SD
Yeah.
mini SD cards, and then upgraded the speakers actually a couple weeks ago. So
You
it's
can
pretty.
upgrade the speaker?
Yeah.
Holy cow. Okay, I did
Yeah.
not know that.
I'll have to
That's
send you
cool.
the link after. And we're able to like honestly, and it's so cool. Like the box, they like sent a screen protector in with it too, and
Yeah.
you can get like the little different like accessories. Like I have like a travel case for it, and it like literally
Mhm.
reminds me of like having my DS when I
Yeah.
was like when I was a kid, like bringing that around with me. So yeah, it's super cool. I think I played. I started with Sapphire. I don't know why I have Ruby, but I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna play Pokemon Sapphire. I played
Mhm.
for like 15 hours already in it.
Mhm.
Like,
Well,
yeah.
and like, you and I both have like gaming PCs, and
Yeah.
I do a lot. Most of my gaming, like gaming is probably my biggest
Mhm.
hobby in terms of time spent and what I feel like knowledgeable about and what I care about and stuff. But returning to classic games on like in my case, like a 32-inch gaming display, especially if it's like a Game Boy Advance game, it's not great, right? Like those games don't look great blown up like that. They also don't like sound great either. Like they're kind of designed for little tiny speakers in these devices, and I found it much more enjoyable to return to like say like old Pokemon games and stuff like that on something like this, especially because I can, like I think you and I both have there's a community custom firmware that is out there. I don't know if you have this installed, the Onion OS thing.
Yeah, yeah, I have that
Um,
installed on mine. Yeah.
yeah, so I
Mhm.
installed that too, and that if you are tracking on this stuff on YouTube, everyone's like, "Yep, get the Miu Mini Plus, put Onion on OS on it immediately because
Yeah.
it's a community maintained custom firmware for this thing. That's really good. Like it's really slick and polished and easy to use, and it has a lot of really cool features like sleep. So you can
Mhm.
basically have a game open, just hit the power button, it'll turn the screen off and lock all the buttons, and then like after 15 minutes, it'll actually power down, but when you power it back up, it'll resume right where in the game that you had left off playing,
Yeah,
which
like
is
I literally
so
just
cool.
turned it back on after like maybe a week off and it's right back where I saved it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is a game changer for especially I think retro games and Pokemon games because I will say like as a dad too because like I will pull this thing out and play for 10 minutes and then like Nat will need something. I don't want to like have to be like, hold on. you know, like
Yeah.
it's really great to just be like, yep, cool. And I'll return to that later. It does not matter. I love that, especially because a lot of older games don't have aren't saving all the time for you. Like they often
Yeah.
didn't have that. Pokemon's actually the exception, um, but a lot of other games, it's like no, you have to like beat 3 levels before you can save again. It's like
Yeah.
I don't want to dedicate that kind of time to a game that's 30 years old. And we can talk about like, you know, the like, well, that's a choice, right? Like I make that choice to play them in that way. But I've just found myself like tearing through like a back catalog. I don't have an actual like spreadsheet or anything of this, but I have an internal in my head of like these are classic games I never really played that I've always wanted to return to. Like right now I'm playing through a bunch of SNES things.
Mhm.
Specifically though, Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, which I just never got to. I my first game console was a N64, and for handheld was a Game Boy Color, so I just missed that stuff.
Yeah.
But SNES stuff and older, beloved, right? Like people love those games. So this is kind of my first time playing. I mean, I've played a lot of these games before, but I'm finding more time for that stuff now because of how convenient this thing is.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and
yeah.
I think they play on the nostalgia factor too a lot with the I've mainly only seen them on YouTube channels, so like as the creators that like have them themselves, like I think that they definitely take that nostalgia factor with them, which is super cool. Jim in the chat says he got Doom and Duke Nukem running on Miles' 3DS at
That's
one point
amazing.
and linked his blog post. That's super cool.
Yeah, I was actually playing through Doom 2 on this because there's like a port. Well,
Oh, okay.
you could play like various console versions of it, but on here, but they actually someone ported it natively to the Mii U, so it has like slightly better controls. I'll say
Mm.
still a little hard to control, but that was pretty fun. And yeah, like they definitely play on the nostalgia factor. Like this custom firmware, I have mine. You won't. If I can get my camera,
Oh,
mine's
that's
running a
cool.
theme that looks like Mac OS 9.
That's super cool.
Which is just like unnecessary, but like that was just out of the box, like, or it was one of the themes that I could pick from
Yeah.
once I installed that Onion OS thing. And yeah, it's so cool. Even like I'm really bad at particularly like platformers. So like I said, I'm playing a lot of like SNES era Mario stuff
Mhm.
that I haven't actually played. Like I love A Link to the Past, one of my favorite games. I can play that game all the way through. Give me a Mario game, I'm below average at those. So the fact that like I don't know if you've messed with this, but you can rewind too. So
Oh, that's
you can
cool.
actually hold this little middle button is a hotkey button, or I don't know what to call it, but it's a
Yeah.
shortcut button. You can do things like do save states.
Mhm.
You can fast forward, which would be really handy for Pokemon if you're trying to
Yeah.
like level up really quickly. Um, and you can also rewind. So if I found myself like if I'm getting to the end of a game that's really difficult and I'm just like I've tried this level 5 times and I can't beat it, I can actually like, all right, just rewind back when I get hit or something like that, which is
Yeah.
kind of cool. And I know we're both just kind of gushing, but I which I mean I'm fine. Like that's kind of what we
Yeah.
came here to do. But I think it's really amazing, kind of the confluence again of like this stuff getting cheap and
Mhm.
then companies being able to do something really like make an interesting product out of that, basically. A few years ago, it was not really a category that even existed. These tiny little devices. This even gets like good battery life and has, by the way, a replaceable battery. Like
Yeah.
there's
Like
a
a
little pack, and obviously this is rechargeable, right? Um,
yeah,
but
recharges USB-C like
yeah, which
and
is
anything
great.
these days, yeah.
But the fact that this is a pack that I can just pull out and could buy a new one in a couple years when that battery no longer charges to the same capacity, so great. Like I wish my phone had a replaceable battery. I remember when phones did. But yeah, so that's super cool. And I think there's a lot of uh it just I don't know. I think that that's really fascinating to see the technology get to that point. And handheld stuff in the gaming sphere is huge. I had a huge year, I feel like, even though like you were talking about like Game Boy Advance, like that Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance were my handhelds as a kid,
Mhm.
and I dropped off around DS. Like that's I just never got one of those. So um but it's been fascinating to see, like, even though Nintendo has the Switch right now, which of course is also handheld, but there's no dedicated handheld only thing
Mhm.
from basically any of the companies right now. And meanwhile, these have been getting super popular. The Steam Deck for handheld PC gaming
Yeah.
has been I have one of those. It's probably my favorite device of last year.
Yeah.
Um, and I still use mine like multiple times a week. I love that thing. And like it's just been crazy to see how much I really think the Switch kind of kicked a lot of this stuff off from Nintendo, but
Yeah,
how
totally.
big handhelds have been getting, even though there's no like successor to the 3DS or DS anymore, really.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's funny you mentioned the Steam Deck. We were looking at the uh, the Asus or
The ROG Ally.
ROG, yeah, the Ally.
Yeah, it's Asus is the company though.
Yeah. And I think that extension of it is super fascinating because it legitimately is like a whole computer in your hand,
Yeah.
because you can run Steam games on them.
I'll
And
be
like,
right back in a second here.
okay. And it's just super cool. Like the Miu is like Linux based, which I find is super, like, I'm just like starting to really see like the difference between like all these like softwares and computers and machines and just all sorts of stuff these days. I'm getting more into like seeing how they all interwork into like making all sorts of like our lives run essentially.
For sure, especially working at a web hosting company, you
Yeah.
are very intimately familiar with, you know, Linux and command line. Like we all at this company have to do that stuff from time to time. Obviously, our infrastructure team are like our experts, but we all do that. Like if you've asked Reclaim to do a migration for you, we've probably done something at the Linux command line.
I'm literally doing this on the side. Like before we sat down, I'm in terminal, like getting ready for an rsync command and stuff. And like, I like having that experience in Reclaim for so long, like I didn't realize how, like it, I guess I don't know how to like put it, but like now I'm seeing other things. I'm like, oh yeah, I've worked with that before. Oh yeah, like I know like this much of like a wide range of.
But that's all it takes, right? Like that's it's, you start recognizing these tools and they pop up again and again. Like we you know, you just mentioned rsync, and like I have been really, one of the reasons I like the Miu specifically is because it's Linux based. I have been messing around with emulation on Linux devices in some fashion for a while now. Like the first thing like that is I had an original Raspberry Pi years ago running RetroPie, which is also Linux, and I had that backing up my game saves to my computer so that I could, you know, basically play something on the Raspberry Pi and then pick it up and play it on my computer in a different emulator. Because like you mentioned, I think near the start of this conversation, like you can emulate all of these things. You don't need a dedicated device. You can do these things on a computer, but it's really nice to do it on a dedicated device. Like it's fun, especially from, I think probably you and I, where it's like, well, I know you and I specifically both have a desk that serves dual purpose for work and gaming. And that's great until you're like, you know what? I spent 8 hours there. Like, I'm going to not be in my office for a little bit.
I don't want to spend another 4 or 5 playing something else.
So, but I love the flexibility of like, well, but you know, maybe I want to have, you know, pick up that game later, or maybe just make sure I have a backup of these game saves. I'm kind of weird about that stuff. So I use rsync on my Miu, not on the Miu, but I use rsync to connect to the Miu and back saves up off of it. And my first time learning rsync was for doing that on a Raspberry Pi when I was just out of college. That was my first experience with rsync, and now I use that like literally every day. So like I have a script on GitHub that I use to keep track of that stuff. And I'm now trying to learn, or it's not learn. I know how to do it, but I need to do the same kind of setup for my Steam Deck. And I grabbed this from my backpack just to compare these things. This is you were talking about the ROG Ally, and that runs Windows and is a whole PC. This is a whole PC too, but it runs Linux, SteamOS specifically. And for a size comparison, very different. I bring this thing almost everywhere if I feel like I may have time for a game. This is mostly doesn't leave my house, to be honest with you. This is something I play on the couch from time to time. But I love both the thing. They're both Linux, and so my next goal is, can I backup saves from both of them, because this thing can emulate consoles that this little guy can't. So my next one is I want to try doing like GameCube, which I still have a GameCube, but I want to get some of that emulation happening on that portable device.
That is so funny. I just stole, my parents know I took it, our GameCube from my parents' house over Christmas. That's actually really funny. And they were like, why do you want to like it doesn't work anymore? And I'm like, I'm gonna fix it.
You'll get it working.
And I want to play the like Pikmin and
Pikmin's one I've never played. That's
Oh, it's
one that's
so
on my
fun.
list of like I need to. I never had it as a kid,
Yeah.
but people love that series. So
Yeah, it is really fun. And then I think like there's an Animal Crossing version that I want to play, but it's
yep,
just the like collector's factor of it at this point. Like
for
it's
sure.
super cool. If I can get it working, that's even better.
Yeah, my GameCube still works, but I want to do the cool thing about the GameCube is it has so a lot of retro consoles, if you hook them up with the analog output to a modern TV, they look like absolute garbage. They just look terrible,
Hmm.
and there's even the input lag that is sometimes pretty noticeable depending on what you're playing. And so to hook them up to an old TV, a CRT is probably the best case, but I don't currently have a good like CRT. I have a PC CRT, which
Mm.
at Reclaim Open I hooked up. You and I hooked
Yeah.
up a retro PC, and I have something like that. My Mister is currently set up for that in my basement, but I don't have anything to hook up old consoles to. The GameCube has a digital out port, and there are people now making little devices that will go right from there to HDMI, and they're not too expensive. It's like $30. It's not nothing, but
Yeah.
to get a great looking output out of that, now 22-year-old console is really cool.
Yeah, that's super cool.
So yeah, I could talk forever probably about about this kind of stuff, but it's been really interesting to see too, like the convergence of like I said, that low power or low price but pretty fast for what it is processor. Linux enables this stuff. You and I are always dealing with Linux stuff because of Reclaim. Like in some ways, I could draw a line between me wanting to back up game saves and now working at a web hosting company, I think, if I really needed to. I'm not going to say that I back up game saves on my resume, but like
Yeah.
if it came up and it'd be like, do you have any experience with rsync? I'd be like, here's my most impressive rsync project
Yeah.
related project. But it's so cool to see the stuff break into the mainstream now too. Like just literally, like you posted in Water Cooler your picture of the Miu Mini, and I was like, I got mine a week ago. like just got mine. And then I swear to God, 3 days later, a friend of mine was like, have you heard of the Miu
The
Mini?
video.
This person I follow on TikTok has like videos of like mods they do, and it looks really cool. And I've apparently you can like emulate, like she had not done emulation or didn't really know that was possible. And so
Yeah.
like her introduction to that as an idea was this device. And she got
So
one
cool.
too, also of course purple transparent. My Christmas present to this friend was I cloned my SD card that was fully set up with all the ROMs and everything for her.
Oh, cool.
That's not really a Christmas present, but like,
Yeah.
Anyway, it's so cool to see that break into be accessible, I think,
Yeah.
to people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's always super cool to see all that sort of stuff. It's super fascinating too. Like I'm the same way. I could talk about it for a while too, but yeah. Awesome.
We're gonna take a hard pivot, and I can try to make a transition here, but I wanted to, while we had a couple minutes here, I've been kind of thinking about a lot of stuff related to my personal web presence and like Mastodon and things like that. And I guess if I'm gonna try to make a segue, we'll talk about the accessibility and cheapness of Linux devices like this. And that transition is happening to web hosting with containerization technologies. And we've talked before about, this is a rough transition. We talked before about this product that we're going to be launching this year called Reclaim Press, and how we can offer a lot of the, not a lot of, all of the benefits of something like Reclaim Cloud for containerized hosting. It's super fast and reliable, but at a pretty low price, and is also easy to use. That convergence is happening in the web space too. That's my rough reason to talk about this. But But what I'm thinking about is I did this. I've been a couple things. So I've been following uh, Kathleen Fitzpatrick has been on a blogging role recently, and if you're in our Discord, she's one of the people that signed up for our RSS thing. And one of the things I love about Kathleen's site, and she uses a tool called 11D for her website. It's a static site generator, so it means that she has this on her computer. Probably uses, I think she uses Git to like back up stuff, and then will build the site out, and then it's hosted on her, I believe, Domain of One's Own account. One of the things I love that Kathleen has done is she's integrated. First of all, this has a commenting tool that's kind of interesting called Hyver Talk. I've not heard of that, but she has web mentions, which is an indie web thing, and basically lets people who also have web mentions on their site like a post or comment or repost them. But she also has experimented with, and maybe this is not the case. Okay, she may have pulled this off of the site, but at one point she also had a Mastodon integration. So when Mastodon posts were coming in, or replies, they would show up on her blog posts. And I think that's really cool. And I really like that because I've been kind of enjoying Mastodon as a space recently. And right now, my website is similar. It's using a tool called Hugo, which is similar in that like I write posts on my computer and then Hugo makes the site. So it's a completely static site. It's not WordPress right now. But one of the problems with it is I really would love my site to have some Mastodon integration with like ActivityPub, and a lot of the stuff we've been talking about recently with PeerTube has ActivityPub integration. Mastodon does. WordPress itself now does too, which is really exciting to me. But right now, the only way to comment on my site is using Discuss, which is like a third-party tool that I bring in. But Discuss is they make money by selling ads. So
No.
I don't love that. There aren't
Yeah.
literal ads on my website, but they use data to basically sell to ad networks. Don't love that. And it's gotten to a point with me where by default, my Firefox blocks Discuss. I could turn this off and have my comments, but I'm like, I really don't like that stuff. And the fact that my browser of choice has decided that Discuss is no longer an acceptable tool, I'm kind of like, yeah, this is time for me to visit something new, maybe ActivityPub based. I don't know, right? And this is also converging with this Reclaim Press stuff. So I'm now looking at this and being like, I think it may be time for me to move my blog off of Hugo and onto WordPress, which I've never had my blog on.
Bringing it back.
Well, that's
you're
the
not
thing.
you back,
I've never used WordPress for my primary blog. My blog predates me even knowing about this stuff because I started using Jekyll, which was hosted on GitHub pages. But you had an upbringing through Domain of One's Own in sorts from UMW, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know about I knew what WordPress, like I'd heard of it, but I didn't really know what it was or how to use it. Or really that whole web hosting world, or Reclaim, any of that stuff until I was a few years out of college, basically. So I don't have a ton of posts, but I've some, and they go back to like 2018. So like I said, I haven't really been blogging, I don't think, as long as you've been using WordPress. I guess this is like, but on the other hand, I do like my website. I put a lot of time into it. I have some custom design to it, and
I love that like beginning portion of it where it like looks like you're in a terminal window.
I made this so long ago. This has persisted as part of my website since its first iteration, which was not even using this tool. It was using like Jekyll and GitHub pages and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but I basically took a web course from a friend, actually, who was doing like these little small group, like learn about HTML and CSS and a little bit about JavaScript. And I took his course that he like sold, very, very inexpensive. But basically it was like a little peer group for learning web development, kind of.
Mhm.
And maybe development is not the right word, because we were learning from the very beginning, right? And he recommended Jekyll, and my like project was I wanted to make this little terminal looking thing just because I thought it was cool, and I saw someone else's site that had something kind of like this. And so this has persisted, and so now I'm like, I'm sentimental about not only my site but the technology that it's based on in some
Mhm.
ways. But
Yeah.
I'm looking at what I want, and I had this blog post last year that I need to find really quick that was like a to-do list. Yeah, to-do list for
Oh,
this
yeah.
site. It's like, oh, I'd love to pull in posts from Mastodon. Oh, I'd love to get rid of Discuss, which I still haven't done. Right now, I don't like the way cover images work. Basically, I can't put captions on them.
Mhm.
I should make an about page. Well, that I could do. I just haven't done. And I'd love to have ActivityPub integration. I'm like, all of these things I know how to do in WordPress because I
Oh.
work with WordPress every day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And at the time, I had not used it. Again, when I first started having any kind of web presence. But for a long time since, I've been like, well, it's kind of neat that my own site is something different for me, and that's sort of fun. But I don't know. I guess I don't really have a question, but
Mhm.
I'm sort of like, convince me,
It's
or
you.
not. I mean, you obviously use WordPress for your site, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
I've used WordPress for 10 years now. And pardon if you can hear my dog Dexter in the background. There are people at my house working, and he's whining because he's like, I can't, I'm not in seeing people. Anyway, I've been working with WordPress for about 10 years and started fresh from scratch on more of a blog role, going through readings and college and stuff like that, and reflections and that sort of thing. And then I want to say I moved into more of like a portfolio base when I started taking art classes too. So like more image based and media focused, which was really cool. And then actually the last um 2 years. I took a little bit of a break over the last couple of months, but I've been helping build out a nonprofit website for a group, a mission group in Nicaragua that I've worked with. I worked with them in high school and then volunteer with them now. So it's turned into more of not just work, but more of like a hobby sort of thing. But like using Elementor to build out the pages for
yeah,
for the nonprofit and everything, which is super cool. And it I really enjoy the aspect that it's open source. So if something's
of course.
broken, you can fix it. Like you're not behind the like I'm gonna name drop Squarespace and Wix and Weebly and all of
You
those. Like
have options, right?
yeah, there's
Whereas your
tons of
option, if
options.
Squarespace doesn't do it, your option is,
Yeah.
okay, I have to not use Squarespace.
Yeah, exactly. Of just all sorts of ways that you can build different tools in the same way that you have the MIU as like another avenue to be able to play games. Like you
Yeah,
have so many different like resources online, um and I've always really like enjoyed the fact like domain of one's own and like even Reclaim in general is the emphasis on like the ownership of like your site, that you don't like you're not stuck if you want to leave the particular platform. Like you own the content, you own what's behind the blog and what you say on your blog, that you can take it with you if you want to move it, instead of like, oh, I'm stuck on this proprietary software where I can't move it.
yeah,
So
yeah. And for a lot of those same reasons, but
yeah.
from a different angle,
Hmm.
that's how I wound up using static site generators in a
Yeah.
similar way. Hugo, the thing Kathleen Fitzpatrick uses 11D, Jekyll, which I used before that, and I know Amanda has some experience using Jekyll as well. Like a lot of us at Reclaim have dabbled in these static site generator tools, and there are benefits in that there's no database. It's really kind of neat that it's just my entire website is a GitHub repository,
Yeah.
technically. In fact, like it's a public one, which is unnecessary and kind of weird, but I sort of like that literally my entire website is my website itself is open source in some
Yeah.
ways, right? But this doesn't offer me much, to be honest with you. Like, like
Yeah.
it's not like I actually expect anyone to go here and be like, oh my god, like I'm gonna like dig through his GitHub repository. Like, there's not anything mind blowing in here. I'm mostly just using Hugo
Mhm.
like as it's intended. And so, if anyone wanted to make what I've done in the way I've done it, you would just go to the Hugo website and the same theme as me, which is called, I think it's the most popular theme. Yeah, Paper Mod. That's the one I'm using. It's literally at the top of the page. Um, so it's not like I'm doing anything crazy custom or unique. Like Pilot mentioned, like maybe I could re-implement this little terminal thing. I absolutely could. That would be so easy. In fact, it would be way easier to do in WordPress than
Yeah.
than in Hugo in some ways, because I would probably now use the site editor, add a custom HTML block, and be done. Whereas this is like I technically like not forked, but I made a custom version of the homepage for this theme. It's not that hard to do, but like it would be not any harder to do in WordPress, I think.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, I'm conflicted because one of the things that I loved coming out of the open publishing ecosystems course that we just came out of, Man and I both talked about our love of plain text, and this is that, and WordPress isn't really that,
Mhm.
but there's so many benefits. I'm talking about all of these things about ActivityPub, and I really do think that's the future of the web, is this sort of connected social tissue that lets people, use something like Mastodon and just go sign up at mastodon.social. It'll be fine. But also for people that want to claw back ownership and maybe they want to host it themselves or go on a smaller instance like Jim hosts DS106 social that I use. And I love that that's like, I don't know, like 50 people on that server or something. It's not a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think those tools and the connective tissue between them is where we're going, or at least I hope it's where we're going, and so I feel like between that and all of the cool stuff we're doing with Reclaim Press, I probably need to make the switch.
Mhm.
And especially one of the big things, and this is I'm gonna bash WordPress for a second, is I've always been bothered. I don't like I want my website to be fast as possible. And
Yeah.
if you've got a large WordPress site and you're not paying much to host it traditionally, it can be slow.
Mhm.
And I'm not talking like, oh, it takes 10 seconds. I'm being real picky here. I'm talking about like, I don't like when a page takes 2 seconds. you know, when
Yeah.
I've got a lot of images on this page, kind of, and it's very slow. And this is on our absolute cheapest option that you can pay for at Reclaim Hosting, right? Like
Yeah.
you can't go lower. But I will say I've been playing around with Reclaim Press so much that I think I want to do the same thing there and do our cheapest option there. It's not launched yet, so I'm not going to talk price, but it'll be about the same as what this account costs,
Yeah.
and it's faster actually, even though it's WordPress. So I don't know. I think I gotta at least try, and now I have to figure out how I'm going to make that transition. I think there probably are ways to like import stuff, but I may honestly just manually move it over, because while I have a lot of posts, while I have some posts, this is not Bava Tuesdays. you
Yeah.
know,
That's a
um,
feat in its own to move around. And if Jim, you ever leave WordPress, like we gotta talk. Like something's wrong with WordPress.
yeah, for sure. So yeah, I don't know. I think this is my project for the year, is to transition my personal site into a WordPress site that I can be that I can get into some of the social web stuff. And if
Mhm.
anyone is also looking for more to talk about, I would highly recommend. I want to say this was Anil Dash, and I want to say this was in Rolling Stone. This has been going around the blogosphere recently. The internet is about to get weird again.
Oh,
I would
okay.
totally recommend giving this a read. And this is kind of been a catalyst for my thinking here. None of this I didn't know about. We've been talking about Mastodon and things like it in the Fediverse here at
Yeah.
Reclaim for a while, and many other much smarter people than me have been talking about it for a long time. But I don't know, this really framed it for me, and it was kind of particularly interesting that this was in Rolling Stone, like a pretty mainstream place. So I'd really highly recommend people check that out. But yeah, I think it's been great, Hugo. But I think this is the year I may need to ditch it and switch over to WordPress, which will do all the things I want it to do, and hopefully encourage me to blog shorter. Another goal I have this year is, I guess a New Year resolution is I don't want all my blog posts to look like, well, this is actually a pretty short one. I don't want all my blog posts to look like this. This takes me too long to write.
Yeah.
And I need to be blogging more and shorter, I think. And I'll be honest, doing my website in a GitHub repository is not conducive to that.
Yeah.
So
I gotcha. Yeah, I'm right there with you with shorter blog posts. I have been meaning to write a blog post about my last trip in Louisiana for WP Campus in New Orleans, and I've been waiting to write the blog post since July, and it's sitting in my draft folders, but because of how like long my brain is like making it seem, I haven't done it. So we are all about the short blog posts, like 2-3 minute 2-3 minute reads max.
yeah.
I like how Hugo
Well, that's what
has
people want to read too, you know?
Exactly. I like how Hugo has that like estimated time read, like on yours it says like 3-minute read or something like that.
And that's part of the theme I'm using. Like they're pulling in some JavaScript thing that does that. But the cool thing is basically anything I can do in Hugo is at least possible in WordPress, right? Because there is no database or server side processing happening here, right? Like when you request a page on my blog right now, you're just getting an HTML file. And so there's got to be some piece of JavaScript that is part of the theme I'm using that does that estimation. I don't even know how it works, to be honest with you. But my point is, I'm confident that either I could go and look at how that works on this site and port it over to my WordPress site manually. But honestly, I'm pretty sure there are WordPress plugins that just do this for me too. So I'm kind of excited about, like, you know, most of the plugin research I do right now is for solving needs of our customers. And that's great. And I've learned so much about WordPress in the 2 years I've worked at Reclaim now. Like, obviously I worked with it before, but like I'm pretty comfortable in WordPress now in a way that I wasn't, say, 3 years ago. And I'm excited to maybe do that research for myself. Like this morning I found one that lets you sync a GitHub repository with WordPress. So maybe that would be a way that I would get my Hugo posts into WordPress quickly.
Yeah, that's cool.
Or I found one that basically it's like the classic editor, but for Markdown. So you can switch between Gutenberg, the block editor, and writing in Markdown. And you can go back and forth. So you can take a post that was written in one and go to the other, and it transitions pretty seamlessly. And I love Markdown. I just talked about that. We just talked about that in open publishing ecosystem. So maybe that would be something I could do. But sometimes when you're publishing a website, you get limited by Markdown when you want to do fancier things. And then my only solution is to then do it in HTML, which is fine. I love HTML too, but sometimes I need to do something quicker than that, you know? So anyway, thank you for indulging my rant and
no, this is great.
But I don't know. I think maybe this stream is a good space for you know, digital identity therapy.
100%. Yeah, Pilot mentions short blog posts unthinkable. Maybe we need a blogathon. I think that would be super fun, Pilot. I think we could totally plan something like that.
Yeah.
Like hackathon, but with blogs.
That would be really interesting to like have you know, maybe as a community thing too, if people would be interested, but like a like a day, or not even a day, but like give people like an hour and say like,
Yeah.
all right, it starts now. Start your blog post now. You can't have started it beforehand. You only have an hour, and
Yeah.
that's it. Like,
The
because
creative restraints are always fun.
well, and
Yeah.
it just, it breaks through. It's so easy to make blog posts into more of a thing than they need to be. Like
Mhm.
if you look at, like, people have been blogging a long time, they often complain about this too, and they'll be like, blogs are so long, and like Medium has kind of, it's not just Medium, but like has spawned a genre of blog posts that are these huge think pieces, and it's like, but blogs used to just be like Twitter, basically, and I actually want to get somewhere between those two things for my site, because I spend too much time thinking about writing and not enough time doing it. So
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely.
Well, I hope this was a at least somewhat interesting kickoff to folks in New Year that are watching. I certainly had fun. Meredith, I hope you had fun too. And
Yeah, this was awesome.
yeah, and we'll see people around the Discord, and the check out the community site to keep up to date on everything we're doing. And yeah, happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday. See y'all.